When we talk about strength, especially in the context of emotionally intelligent women, we often imagine resilience as endurance, the ability to tolerate, to carry, to keep going no matter who or what stands in the way, but that definition is incomplete. Real strength is not just about what you can Arabic, ta Arabic, het Arabic, meme Arabic, lamb. It's about what you consciously decide you will no longer carry. One of the most defining traits of a strong woman is her relationship with boundaries. Not surface-level boundaries, the kind we casually mention and then quietly abandon, but deeply embodied boundaries rooted in self-respect. She understands something that takes many people years, even decades, to fully grasp. Access to her emotional world is not a right. It is a privilege. This awareness changes everything. It means she pays attention to how people make her feel, not in a reactive or overly sensitive way, but in a grounded, observant way. She notices patterns. She notices the subtle erosion of her confidence in the presence of constant criticism. She notices the confusion that comes from being around someone who manipulates facts or distorts reality. She notices the quiet loneliness that emerges when her feelings are repeatedly dismissed or minimized. And instead of explaining these experiences away, she takes them seriously. There is a kind of courage in that. Because acknowledging emotional harm often requires letting go of comforting illusions like the belief that if you just try harder, communicate better, or give more, the other person will change. Strong women are not immune to this hope, but they are willing to question it. They ask themselves difficult, clarifying questions. Is this relationship nourishing me, or is it slowly depleting me? Am I being seen and respected here, or am I constantly shrinking to maintain connection? What makes this especially powerful is that the decision to step back is not fueled by anger or bitterness. It is grounded in clarity. It is a calm, steady recognition that some dynamics are incompatible with a healthy inner life. Take constant critics, for example. These are not people offering constructive feedback or thoughtful disagreement. These are individuals who habitually point out flaws, who subtly or overtly communicate that you are not enough. Over time, this kind of interaction doesn't just hurt. It reshapes how you see yourself. Strong women understand that prolonged exposure to this energy can distort their self-perception, and they refuse to internalize a narrative that diminishes their worth. Then there are manipulators, people who use guilt, confusion, or selective truths to maintain control. These relationships are particularly insidious because they make you question your own reality. You start second, guessing your instincts, wondering if you are overreacting or misunderstanding. A strong woman learns to trust that internal signal that says, something here is not right, and she honors it, even when it would be easier to ignore it. And perhaps one of the most quietly damaging dynamics is emotional invalidation. Being around people who consistently dismiss your feelings, who tell you you're too sensitive, too dramatic, or simply wrong for feeling what you feel, can create a deep sense of disconnection from yourself. Strong women recognize that emotional safety is not negotiable. They don't require others to agree with every feeling, but they do require respect for their emotional reality. What's important here is that setting these boundaries is not about punishment. It's not about cutting people off in a dramatic or performative way. It's about alignment. It's about choosing relationships that reflect and reinforce the kind of life you are trying to build. And yes, this can be uncomfortable. Sometimes it means disappointing people. Sometimes it means walking away without closure or without the other person understanding your decision. That discomfort is real, but strong women are willing to Arabic, ta Arabic, het Arabic, meme Arabic, lamb that discomfort because they know the cost of not doing so is far greater. There is also a quiet discipline involved in this process. It's not a one-time decision, it's a practice. It requires consistency, choosing, again and again, not to engage in conversations that are harmful, not to justify your boundaries endlessly, not to reopen doors that you have consciously closed. Over time, something shifts. The space that was once occupied by tension, self-doubt, and emotional exhaustion begins to open up. There is more clarity, more steadiness, more room to think and to grow. And perhaps most importantly, there is a deeper sense of trust in oneself. Because every time a strong woman honors her boundary, she sends herself a powerful message: my well-being matters. And that message becomes the foundation for everything else: how she shows up in relationships, how she navigates challenges, how she defines her own worth. So when she chooses not to keep certain people around, it is not an act of rejection. It is an act of self-preservation, of self-respect, and ultimately of self-trust. And the truth is, the people who are meant to be in her life will not require her to abandon herself to keep them there. If there is one thing to carry forward, it is this: every boundary you set is a declaration of who you are and who you are no longer willing to become. If protecting boundaries is about preserving your inner world, then choosing growth is about expanding it. And strong women understand that these two things are deeply connected. It is not enough to simply remove what harms you. You must also be intentional about what you allow to remain. Because the truth is, every relationship you maintain is shaping you, subtly, consistently, and often unconsciously. Growth, in this sense, is not just personal ambition or external success. It is psychological evolution. It is the ongoing process of becoming more self-aware, more grounded, more aligned with your values. And this kind of growth requires an environment that supports it. It requires relationships that challenge you in constructive ways, that encourage honesty, that make space for both your strengths and your vulnerabilities. This is why strong women are deeply selective about who they keep close. They recognize that not all connections are neutral. Some relationships actively pull you forward, while others quietly hold you in place. And sometimes the most dangerous ones are not overtly toxic. They are simply misaligned. They normalize stagnation. They reward comfort over courage. They subtly discourage change because your growth disrupts their sense of familiarity. Take jealousy, for instance, not the fleeting human kind that we all experience from time to time, but the persistent, underlying resentment that shows up when you begin to evolve. When your success, your confidence, or your clarity becomes a source of discomfort for someone else, it creates tension in the relationship. And often, that tension is expressed through subtle competition, passive-aggressive comments, or a lack of genuine support. Strong women do not ignore these signals. They don't rationalize them away or shrink themselves to maintain harmony. They understand that true connection is rooted in mutual encouragement. If someone cannot celebrate your growth, they are not aligned with the direction your life is moving in. And then there is negativity, the kind that goes beyond occasional pessimism and becomes a worldview. These are individuals who consistently focus on what is wrong, what could fail, what is not possible. Over time, this perspective can be contagious. It begins to influence how you interpret your own experiences, how you assess risk, how you imagine your future. Strong women are not naive. They don't expect constant positivity or unrealistic optimism, but they are mindful of emotional climates. They ask themselves, do the people around me expand my sense of possibility, or do they reinforce my fears? Because growth requires a certain level of belief, not blind belief, but a grounded openness to what could be. And perhaps one of the most draining dynamics is the presence of energy takers, people who consistently receive but rarely reciprocate. These relationships often feel one-sided. You are the listener, the supporter, the one who shows up. And while generosity is a beautiful trait, it becomes unsustainable when it is not balanced. Strong women learn to recognize this imbalance without guilt. They understand that constant giving without renewal leads to depletion, and depletion is the enemy of growth. You cannot evolve, create, or lead effectively when you are emotionally exhausted. What sets strong women apart is not that they never encounter these dynamics. It is that they respond to them with intention. They are willing to make difficult decisions in service of their long-term well-being, and often those decisions involve letting go. Letting go is one of the most misunderstood aspects of growth. It is often framed as loss, as failure, as something to be avoided. But in reality, it is a necessary function of transformation. You cannot become something new while holding onto everything that belonged to your past self. There is a philosophical weight to this idea. Growth demands space, and space is created through release, through the conscious decision to no longer invest in relationships that no longer align with who you are becoming. This does not mean that strong women discard people casually or without care. In fact, the opposite is true. They approach these decisions with thoughtfulness and integrity. They reflect. They communicate when appropriate. They give opportunities for repair, but they also recognize when a pattern is unlikely to change, when a dynamic is fundamentally incompatible. And in those moments, they choose clarity over comfort. What makes this especially powerful is that, over time, this selectivity begins to shape a different kind of social environment. One that is rooted in mutual respect, shared values, and emotional safety. A space where growth is not only accepted, but expected. Where conversations are honest, where support is genuine, where accountability exists without shame. In this kind of environment, something remarkable happens. Growth accelerates, not in a chaotic or overwhelming way, but in a steady, sustainable way. You begin to see yourself more clearly. You take more aligned risks. You recover more quickly from setbacks. Because you are no longer carrying the weight of relationships that contradict your progress. And perhaps most importantly, you begin to internalize a new standard. You no longer question whether you deserve supportive, healthy connections. You expect them, and that expectation becomes a filter. It guides your decisions. It shapes your boundaries. It influences who you allow into your life moving forward. So when a strong woman chooses growth over toxic attachments, she is not just changing her social circle. She is redefining her identity. She is making a statement about what she values, what she tolerates, and what she is working toward. And that kind of clarity is transformative, because in the end, your life will reflect not just what you aspire to, but what you consistently allow. So the question becomes, are the people around you supporting your evolution or silently negotiating your limits? Because growth is not just about becoming more. It is about becoming more of who you truly are and having the courage to release anything that stands in the way.